gentrification, slop. These words have become increasingly popular in the last few years. They are commonly used to refer to things involving AI. On YouTube alone, nearly 1 in 10 of the fastest growing channels in July 2025 were entirely AI generated, featuring absurd stuff like, quote, babies trapped in space, or quote, zombie celebs, or quote, cat soap operas. Slop content also refers to low-effort videos meant to get as many clicks as possible or comply with SEO. Researcher Doctorow called this phenomenon ttification. This is what it looks like. First, the platform creates a super user-friendly platform with a bunch of incentives to bring people on board. Second, those people bring their friends and family and create a form of dependency from the app. 3, the platform invites businesses to take advantage of the data collected from users and sell their products. 4, the platform exploits both users and businesses' dependency on it to jack up fees, add fees for previously free services, put a bunch of ads, making users' experience on the platform increasingly shittier. And 5, live on as long as users are willing to put up with it. Now I want you to keep in mind those 5 steps because they are going to be useful to understand this phenomenon of late-stage gentrification. In this video, I want to define what late-stage gentrification is. I had this idea for the video when I came across the whole discourse around the West Village Girl. For those of you who don't know, the West Village Girl is a young woman living in the expensive West Village in Manhattan. She typically wears a white top, light-washed baggy jeans, white sneakers, plus presumably cheap, buggy, black plastic sunglasses, and chunky gold jewelry, which they wear everywhere, even when they're coming back from the gym. The jewelry is always gold, never silver, the hair is pulled back, and you can find them in another uniform, which is just a matching Pilates set in candy pastel colors or a Skims nude. This description is taken from an essay from cultural commentator Brooke Collier, and it's pretty much what unleashed the whole discourse. Online, people poured their hatred for the West Village Girl they perceived as the ultimate gentrifier. Some even called her the face of gentrification. Interestingly though, Brooke never mentioned gentrification in their piece, but that's what people got from it. This was the portrait of gentrification. I think Brooke's decision not to mention gentrification was not a personal choice, but a professional one. Brooke is a journalist, and as a journalist, you're supposed to use concepts and terms when they are actually relevant to the thing you're describing. In that case, I'd like to go back to the definition of gentrification. Gentrification is the process in which a poor area, as of a city, experiences an influx of middle-class or wealthy people who renovate and rebuild homes and businesses, and which often results in an increase in property values and the displacement of earlier, usually poorer residents. Is that the case for the West Village Girl? Who is she replacing? Well, according to Brooke, the West Village Girl is replacing residents who seem much richer than her. Quote, at L'Artusi, a high-end Italian restaurant, the owner, Kevin Gary, told me he's selling less expensive wine post-pandemic. Quote, previously the crowd was kind of that classic West Village type. Late 30s, early 40s, masters of the universe with good jobs and no kids, end quote. He said, quote, a $150 bottle of wine doesn't compare to a vodka soda. So there is a recognition that the West Village Girl is making the West Village shittier, but it's not in the traditional gentrification way. She's not replacing working class communities, those people have been replaced a very long time ago. She's replacing old money, quiet luxury, the caddy Bradshaws. The West Village Girl isn't the face of gentrification as we commonly know it. She's the face of ttification, or what I call late-stage gentrification. Part 1. How did we get here? In 2002, urban studies professor Richard Florida published this groundbreaking book, The Rise of the Creative Class. The book was a response to the crises many cities were facing at the time. In the 1970s, 1990s, cities like New York, London, Detroit, Berlin, etc. suffered deindustrialization, population loss, and a shrinking tax base, which left cities officials wondering, how do we bring people and money back? In the 1950s to 1970s, the answer was bulldozers and highways to create business zones and facilitate commuting from middle-class suburbia and the city. In the US, these initiatives were called urban renewal, and they had mixed results. For example, sociologists Massey and Denton argued that urban renewal built a wall between middle-class white suburbia and the low-income urban black population, leading to more segregation and less opportunities for African Americans. That's when Florida comes in. He offered a fresh alternative that promised culture-led revitalization. His core argument is that economic growth comes from attracting and retaining creative workers, tech enthusiasts, academics, entrepreneurs, people who innovate. but that these people choose where to live based on quality of life. They want tolerance, diversity, vibrant street life, arts, coffee shops, historic architecture, nightlife, bike lanes. Because of that, Florida came up with a formula for city success, the 3 T's: talent, technology, and tolerance. In other words, if a city invests in culture, in public spaces, in authentic neighborhoods, creatives will come and bring investment and jobs. City leaders embraced the 3 T's in the early 2000s. I think I've said it already in another video, but I do want to make a video on the third place. I think it's such an interesting topic. I want to bring a little nuance to the discourse. And finally, they marketed neighborhoods as edgy, but still safe. However, Florida's didn't account for the long-term consequences of such model, or wasn't very cautious about it. The development of cities around the so-called creative class. I made a video about it 2 years ago explaining why this concept is BS. But anyway, this development led to another phenomenon that we're very familiar with, gentrification. One clear example of this phenomenon, and probably a source of inspiration for Florida's book, is Williamsburg in Brooklyn. Back in the late 90s, Williamsburg in Brooklyn was a very different place. It was the home of working-class Puerto Rican, Dominican, Hasidic Jewish, and Italian families. You had old warehouses and cheap lofts. Then came the artists, musicians, and young creatives looking for spaces close to Manhattan they could rent for cheap. They turned empty factories into studios, put on DIY shows, and built their own community. Pretty soon, Williamsburg got a reputation for being cool and authentic. That's when the developers moved in. Real estate ads stopped just selling apartments, they were selling the Brooklyn lifestyle, gritty but stylish. A 2005 rezoning along the waterfront brought in glass high-rises and luxury condos, and rents went through the roof. It's the exact same story for Shoreditch in London, Kreuzberg in Berlin, Le Marais in Paris, or Fitzroy in Melbourne. Richard Florida's vision was meant to offer a fresh and tolerant alternative to urban renewal, but you don't need to spend a lot of time in the neighborhoods I mentioned to realize that it's not really the case. Gentrification continues the class and racial segregation, but in a much more insidious way. And in recent years, the growing frustrations and anger emerging from gentrification have been directed at one entity, the gentrifier. Originally called hipster, the gentrifier now takes various shapes and forms. I really like those short videos from Meditations for the Anxious Mind. He documents gentrifier in all their variety, from the corporate girlies.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Frankie's Cultural Observations. In the absence of collective politics, corporate girlies emerge from the rubble, lip-glossed, loyal to the shareholders, and live, laugh, latte.
To the tech bros.
Tech bros are digital hustlers who have artificial intelligence. These AI-driven, blockchain-enabled datasets are confined to their WeWork cubicles, sinking into a beanbag in the communal area.
But also the left-wing academics.
Left-wing academics don't need the gym. They build their strength by pulling the ladder up on poor people. The same people who will never be invited to their think tank about wealth redistribution.
The Paris creatives.
Paris creatives are desperate to be seen, but terrified of being understood, because being understood would mean they're not that deep or brooding and mysterious like their art portfolio.
And so on. The videos can feel really harsh at times, but they feel cathartic for many people looking for an outlet to express their anger towards gentrification and how it's affecting their lives. Those videos also serve as a way for quote-unquote gentrifiers to differentiate themselves by pointing a finger at the caricature as proof that they're not really like that. Like, have you ever been in one of those conversations with a creative-looking person complaining about other creative-looking people and thought, dude, you're doing the thing? And I get it, it's one of those things where people hate you for being this way, but you also get a lot of in-group validation by being that way, if you see what I mean. I don't blame people who look like hipsters. I can look like a hipster myself. I mean, look at me, look at my background. We all seek validation in one way or another. Like, I'm still waiting for you to click on that like button. I love those videos making fun of the various types of urban creatives, but I also find it important to explain that they are not the reason why rents are increasing and why a flat white costs an hour on Texas minimum wage. You know, over the past 2 decades, big money, so hedge funds, private equity, and real estate investment have pulled billions into buying up urban property to craft the ultimate hipster experience for us. After the 2008 financial crisis, for example, Wall Street firms bought up foreclosed homes in bulk and turned them into rentals. Pension funds looking for safe long-term returns also invest heavily in core real estate assets, which often means redeveloped urban neighborhoods with rising rents. Yes, your elders' pensions are fueling gentrification. And these aren't just market forces flowing around on their own. They're often pushed along by quiet conversations between developers, lobbyists, and city officials. By the time a neighborhood starts to feel cool, the big players have already made their moves. The flat white drinker is not the cause, it's just part of the marketing. Dublin City is such a good example of this. The land of sheeps and Celtic music and Paul Mescal is also the land of foreign investment. Now listen to me, in 2024, foreign multinationals paid a record 88% of all Irish corporate tax. Between 2017 and 2021, just 3 corporate groups, likely including Apple, Google, and Microsoft, made up around a third of all corporate tax revenues. They have so much power there. Why? Simple. Ireland has one of the lowest corporation tax rates in Europe. And what's interesting about Dublin in comparison to other Western countries is that the corporations fueling gentrification are very visible. On Google Maps, you can see Grand Canal and Ballsbridge with their massive tech offices built by taking over council housing, old residential buildings, and unused land. To keep these companies in Ireland, the government is approving more and more data centers, which are now adding to the risk of power and water shortages for ordinary people. These corporations have so much power. When I talk to young Irish people about this whole situation, most of them tell me that things are pretty in a city like Dublin, where foreign investment arrived in huge amount and very fast, it kind of feels like shock doctrine. You know, this concept described by Naomi Klein. Because of that, a lot of young Irish people move to Australia. It's a big phenomenon. Local artists are struggling to keep culture alive, and the insane cost of living is building up frustration that are redirected towards ethnic minorities and refugees. Economic shocks like the one Ireland has gone through are great opportunities for foreign investors to get in there and make as much profit as possible. These shocks hit harder in post-colonial countries like Ireland, in high-debt countries like Argentina, in smaller economies like Fiji or Malta, and peripheral economies like Greece. The changes in those places are very easy to see. And gentrification moves much faster because foreign investors have so much power over how the city, the country looks. But it would be wrong to believe that Western Europe, the US are any different. The process is the same. It's just more low-key, harder to spot. Part 2. Late-stage gentrification. In the introduction, we talked about the example of the West Village girl as the perfect example of this phenomenon of late-stage gentrification. Not all gentrified cities reach that state, but when they do, you can see it very clearly. I went to the West Village in June of this year, and that's where I first learned about the West Village girl. It was written on a board outside a coffee shop. At first, I thought it was just a rebranding of that girl. You remember that online trend? The one popularized by girls who focus on being healthy, productive, and fit. I made a video about it a while ago. Please don't watch it because my accent is just... ugh.
Bonjour à tous, my name's Alice and welcome back to my channel.
So yeah, I didn't really see the point in making yet another video on something very similar, but the more I looked into it, the more I researched, and just by walking in West Village as well, that's when I realized that there was potential, there was something different, and I needed to make a video about it. That difference boils down to the fact that the West Village girl is dependent on the place she lives in. You can be that girl anywhere, but you can't be the West Village girl outside the West Village. It was also funny comparing the different posts online on Instagram of the West Village girls, how coherent everything looked, and then compare that to reality, to the unfiltered real-life version of those places and how they're organized in the village. And that's when it hit me. The West Village is late-stage gentrification. So I told you at the beginning of the video to remember the 5 steps of according to Doctorow. For late-stage gentrification, I'm just going to do 3 steps. So step 1, the invitation. Online, this is when a platform launches. It's new, it's user-friendly, it's exciting, it's full of incentives to bring people on board. In real life, this is when the neighborhood becomes affordable, creative, and full of opportunities. The rent is cheap, there's history in the streets, and cool services are starting to pop up. That's when people arrive, they bring friends, they post about it online, suddenly the area is aspirational and relatable, it starts to build a presence online and grow there. In the West Village Girl article, Brooke writes about 2 influencers whose feeds were, quote, just the right level of accessible yet enviable. Fast fashion and white sneakers, solid core workouts and Aperol spritz, all set against a picture-perfect New York backdrop. That's the vibe, the kind of life you think you could have if only you lived there. Step 2, the extraction. Online, this is when the platform starts monetizing its user base. In real life, that's when investors realize there's a prime demographic to sell to. Coffee chains, jewelry brands, artisanal stores, all rush in. When I was walking along Bleecker Street in the West Village, I saw it everywhere. Shop fronts with huge flowery entrances screaming, "Take a selfie here." Jewelry shops that were half artisanal, half dropshipping. Random inspirational quotes on sandwich boards. Coffee shops that looked stylish but turned out to be pure set design. And the more it's redesigned for content, the less the neighborhood makes sense, the more inauthentic it gets. Step 3, the ttification. Online, this is when the platform becomes worse and more expensive. In real life, that's when rents spike, when small businesses have to close or are forced into gimmicky Instagram marketing, and every third place is suddenly selling merch as if it's a cult. The results, $5 to $7K in rent, $7 coffees, $18 avocado toasts. The West Village becomes less about being an actual neighborhood and more about being a set for videos and Instagram posts. The atmosphere is not cohesive anymore, it's just a bunch of moments to capture and then crop to look perfect online. I would argue that Shoreditch is in a very similar place right now. It's historically known for its street art, but increasingly covered in brand campaigns. Like, look at this barber ad. What is it doing here? Vintage shops still exist, but the clothes are overpriced and not great quality. It's testing how much you're willing to pay for a vintage Ralph Lauren flannel. 20, 30, 40 pounds? It's ridiculous. So that, for me, is late-stage gentrification. It's gentrification in real life. Designing an experience purely to squeeze as much money as possible from the people who are willing to keep buying into it. Conclusion. By 2017, Richard Florida admitted in The New Urban Crisis that his model of the creative class taking over cities had fueled inequality, segregation, and gentrification. But I think it's a bit dishonest. The outcome was very predictable. In fact, the reason why I made a parallel between online gentrification and real-life late-stage gentrification is to show that this phenomenon is universal. Our societies are shaped by those market forces, making our online and real life increasingly bad. Now the question is, how much can we take? When does this become too much? In fact, in many countries around the world, people are rebelling against the market forces making their lives and neighborhoods worse. Protests against Airbnb and other foreign investors are happening in Mexico City, in Barcelona, in Greece, in Ireland as well. That makes me hopeful. We know who the culprits are. They're not the migrants or refugees, they're not always the gentrifier. They are those market forces. Those foreign investors sucking everything from the places we love. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like, to subscribe if it's not already done. Before I leave, I want to say a big thank you to my Patreons. On Patreon, you get access to exclusive content, to the Discord, to the live streams. You get to see as well all the mess that is in... I just did a video showing like how messy the whole setup is, because I'm not in my usual space, as you can see. And yeah, this is the sort of thing I post on Patreon. I would like to say also a big thank you to top tier Patreons: Nofal, Shamari, Fred, Hongqing Huang, Paul-Louis Agenot, Wolf Gratz, Patrick Button, Jeff Lee, Yelon, Tayab Matin, Nick, Brandon, James Siddle, Ojwal, Pablo, Patrick, Boris, Ria, Corey G, Tristan, Christopher, Ion, Donage, Alex, Manuel, Christopher France, and Perry, and thank you to the other ones who prefer to stay anonymous. That's it for me, that's it for today. I'll see you very soon. Salut!